So we will chant from the second chapter, the end of the second chapter, verses 62 through the end, that is through 72, 62 through 72. Oh, let me ask, where is Suren? Can you bring the cushion? I don't need it for comfort's sake, but I'm too low. I can't see the book. The book. If it's not there, it's on the dining room chair, Jiten. Oh, I'm sitting on it. I'm sitting on it. I looked down and didn't see it, and I was sitting on it. Sorry, Surendi. Yes, no, I didn't see it down here, and also I feel lower than last time. Maybe I shrank, I don't know. Or the harmonium grew. Okay, so again, 62 through 72. Om Bharathaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitaamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Amba Tvamanusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Vasudeva Sutan Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodho Bhijayate Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha Sammohat Smriti Vibhramaha Smriti Bhramshat Buddhinasho Buddhinashat Pranasyati Ragadvesha Viyuktaistu Vishayanindriyaischarana Atmavasyair vidheyatma prasadamadigatchati prasade sarvadukhanam hanirasyopajayate prasannachetaso hyashu buddhi paryavatishtate nasti buddhirayuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayatah shantirashantasya kutah sukham indriyanam hi charatam yanmano nuvidhiyate tarasya harati pragyam Vayurnavamivambhasi Tasmadyasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashaha indriyanam indriyarthe vibhyastasya prajna pratisthita ya nisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagarti sanyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munehi Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti na kama kami vihaya kamanyas sarvan pomam starati nispriha Nirmamo nirahankara sashanti madhigacchati Esha brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati Sthitva syamantakalepi brahma nirvanam richati. We'll save the colophon until we actually finish the chapter. Okay, so we'll continue where we left off last time, and that's chapter 2, verse 62. Again, we're in the midst of the Stita Prajna Lakshanas, as they're called. Lakshana meaning the indicators, signs of a Stita Prajna, person of steady wisdom. Stita, steady, Prajna, wisdom. So the signs of a person of steady wisdom, which Arjuna had asked Sri Krishna to explain to him, because Sri Krishna had been telling Arjuna about steadying the mind, establishing the mind in yoga. Samatvam yoga uchyate, that is, equanimity is known as yoga. And yoga karmasu kaushalam, that yoga means skillfulness in action. And in various ways, he'd been describing the state of one who is steady or established in wisdom. So Arjuna naturally wanted to know what the characteristics are. So I won't go back over what we've already gone over, just to say that that is what is being discussed. And so now in verse 62 and 63, which are taken together, he describes the state of distraction, state of one who is not steady in their wisdom. So he says, Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bhijayate krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibhramaha Smriti bhramshat buddhinasho buddhinashat pranasyati. So this says that dhyayato vishoyam bhumsa sangasteshu pajayate. So vishoyan dhyayato, thinking about. Dhyayato means meditating on, but here it means thinking about. Vishoyan, that is objects of the senses. By thinking about objects of the senses, sangasteshu pajayate. Teshu, in those objects of the senses, sanga, attachment, upajayate, develops, grows, follows. So by thinking of objects of the senses, attachment to them grows. So first I'll go through the bare explanation of the two verses, and then I'll come back and explain the psychology behind them. Sangat sanjayate kama. Out of attachment to the objects of the senses, grows desire, that is, desire for the objects of the senses. Kamat krodho bhijayate. And out of desire, anger is generated. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. Out of anger comes delusion. Sammohat smriti vibhramaha. Out of delusion comes the loss or the loss of memory. And I'll explain what that means in a moment. Smriti bhramshat buddhinasho. Out of the loss of memory comes the destruction of intelligence. Buddhinashat pranasyati. And by the loss of intelligence, one is destroyed. Comes destruction, or one is destroyed. So this is a series of cause and effect. By thinking about objects of the senses, attachment to them grows. And that's obvious. But obvious means it's obvious what happens, but of course Sri Krishna's intent in describing this is to tell us how to avoid that. So if by thinking of objects of the senses, attachment to them grows, then by not thinking of objects of the senses, attachment diminishes. So now how do we not think of objects of the senses? That's what we see, that's what we hear, that's what we're dealing with all day. We're constantly dealing with objects of the senses, and so how do we not think of them? How can you drive a car if you're not aware of the road around you? How can you prepare food to eat if you're not aware of the things that you're cooking? So everything in life depends on being aware of our surroundings, and our surroundings means objects of the senses. That which we see, that which we hear, that which we smell, that which we taste, that which we touch. So Sri Krishna isn't giving suicidal advice, that close your eyes, your ears, and everything completely and never think of the sense objects from now on, because you couldn't do that anyway. But what he means is that by repeated thinking of a particular thing, that develops attachment for it. So say, just to give an ordinary example, say that you need a new car. That's a natural need. It's maybe a real need, and maybe something that you can pursue. There's no harm in that. But if you spend all of your time just dreaming about the new car you're going to get, then attachment is bred. So look on the things that you have to deal with in life, look on them as necessities, not as something to constantly dream about. By dreaming and daydreaming and pondering and reflecting and thinking over and over again about desirable objects, then naturally the attachment goes deeper and deeper. Hopefully, everybody brushes their teeth every day. But you don't spend hours every day daydreaming about brushing your teeth. It's something that you have to do, so you do it. And so most of the things that we do in life are like that. They're things that we need to do, and so do them. But by daydreaming and thinking in the mind, constantly going back to the same thing over and over again about, oh, how wonderful it'll be when I get that new car and I'm driving down the road. The car is so comfortable, and oh, I love that new car smell, and I'll drive and show it to my friends, and people will be impressed. People will realize how successful I must be because I've got such a nice new expensive car. And then you go on thinking about it, then it becomes an object of attachment. It's not just something that you need and that you get because you need it. Now it's something that you are extraordinarily attached to. When I first joined the order, I joined in Chicago, which wasn't my home, but I went to Chicago to join. And I was sent right away to the monastery in a small village called Ganges, Michigan. And as some of you know, Ganges was Ganges, Michigan from the 1850s. It had nothing to do with us being there. It was already Ganges, Michigan when we first went there in the 1960s. And so I went to Ganges, and it was a farming community. It's still a farming community, though many of the farms there have gone out of business because of competition from California that they couldn't keep up with. But at the time I was there, it was a big farming community, a vital farming community, a fruit growing area. And there was a farmer that we got to know there in the little village. Village, there were only about 500 people in the whole township of Ganges. So it was a tiny village. Everybody knew everybody. So as a farmer, we got to know who, whenever he bought a new car or a new truck, car for the family or a truck for his farm work or whatever, he would go out and bring it home. He'd go to his workshop, get a hammer, come out and wham, put a dent right in the hood of the new vehicle. He said he did that because as long as it was spotless and brand new, he would be worried about everything. He'd be worried about the first scratch, worried about hitting something. But once he had a big dent in it, he didn't have to worry about anything. It's already messed up. So that was his rather crude way, but effective way of getting over attachment. So thinking about objects, attachment grows. Sangat sanjayate kama. Through attachment, then desire begins to grow. You see the subtle distinction between the two. Here, the attachment just means that the mind keeps going to it. The mind keeps going to it. So attachment in that sense. But out of that, then desire begins to grow. Of course, there's the other side, the flip side, which Sri Krishna is not talking about, and that is things that we fear or things that we hate. We hate somebody, and we go on thinking about them, and our hatred grows also. We hate something, a situation, and we go on thinking about it, and our attachment to it grows, our connection to it grows. The hatred grows. Something that we fear, neither hate nor are attracted to, but something that we fear. We go on thinking about it, and that fear goes on growing. So the same psychology applies in the negative side as well, but he's only approaching from the positive side. So that which we think about continually, we begin to develop a sense of attachment to it. That which we're attached to, gradually a desire grows for it. And then kamat krodho bijayate. Out of attachment comes anger. Well, now how does that happen? Out of attachment comes anger. He's left an important part out. He knew that Arjuna was intelligent enough to fill in the blank, but we need to recognize what the blank is. So out of desire grows anger means when our desire is frustrated, then we get angry. And that's a profound psychological truth, something that's helpful to us in our everyday life. This list is to help us in our everyday life. When we find that we're angry about something, sometimes the reason why we're angry may be hidden from us. It may be a very deep cause. There may be something that is not really the immediate situation that is making us angry, but the immediate situation is triggering something that is deeper. So sometimes it's just a superficial thing. We want something, somebody gets in the way, and we get angry. To take a romantic example, a young man has fallen in love with a young woman, and he wants her for his own, and then some other suitor comes and gets in the way, and of course he gets angry. She's mine. What are you doing? You get out of the way. So the same with other things as well. You're driving down to take a subtle example, where it's not immediately obvious that it connects to this, but it does. You're driving down the freeway feeling happy and going where you want to go and everything, and suddenly somebody cuts you off on the road and you get angry. What is the connection to desire there, right? Somebody just misbehaved. Well, the fact is that you wanted to be able to drive peacefully and get to where you're going without a disturbance. And somebody has cut you off, and so that also has disturbed or frustrated your desire to just be left alone. What's wrong with that? We all want to be left alone. Everybody wants to be. We don't want to be left too alone, but we want to be left just enough alone. But we have to learn to be big enough so that we can contain situations like that. The frustration of even small things, like just the normal expectation that nobody's going to bother me on the freeway. Of course, we all know that especially in certain places like California and Texas. Both, in fact, I just heard on NPR that yesterday that Houston is the most deadly city in the United States to drive in. The most deadly city in the whole United States. Most deadly city in Texas and the most deadly city in the whole United States, Houston. And so we can expect to be cut off plenty here. So that we just have to get used to. We have to become big enough so that we know that, okay, I'm not going to let these things disturb me. But anger is always tied to some frustrated desire. Sometimes an obvious desire, like the young man who wants to connect with a woman that he's very attracted to, and somebody else comes in between and asks her to dance with him before he gets a chance to ask her to dance, or whatever it is, or something as simple as just wanting to be left alone, and then somebody cuts us off on the freeway. So anger comes from that. So whenever you get angry, look for the cause of the anger. I don't mean the person who made you angry. They're not the cause. They're just the occasion of your getting angry. But why is it that I get angry over this? And you'll always find, if you look carefully enough, you'll learn something about yourself, and you'll learn that it's connected to some desire and the frustration of some desire. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. Out of anger comes delusion. That's common experience to all of us. That doesn't need much psychologizing. We find that when the mind becomes angry, we lose perspective. We lose perspective. And we do things that we wish we hadn't done afterwards. Is there ever a time when we got really angry and we acted on our anger that we didn't later regret it? No, we always regret it, because when we're angry, we say things and do things that later we realize, I overreacted. I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to say that. I made a fool out of myself. I hurt somebody then when I didn't need to. Or I blew up when I didn't really understand the situation, and just made a mess of things. So from this we learn, first of all, to always, when we get angry, to look, why am I angry? And to look inside for the cause of my anger, not to look outside. Yes, somebody cutting me off on the freeway, they did something wrong. That we admit. We're not saying that that they didn't do anything wrong. No, they did. But then the anger is my problem, not that person's problem. Unless I get so angry that I ram my car into the back of their car. Hopefully we don't get that angry, but some people do. Some people get so angry that they pull out a gun and shoot the other person in road rage accidents. But we here wouldn't do that, but some people do. But even so, recognizing that, yes, sometimes people do wrong things and that makes us angry, but the anger is always our problem. And so that's why we have to look in ourselves. So it's not excusing the other person's behavior. It's not saying that cutting people off on the road is okay. It's not saying that somebody saying insulting things to us in the office is okay. No, it's not allowing that. It's not saying that somebody abusing us is okay. No, those things are not okay. But again, the anger is something that's inside of me. So how do I handle the anger? And how do I keep the anger from taking me over? One of the things that some of you have seen, all of us have probably seen, is that if there's somebody who wants to irritate you for some bad motivation, they want to get under your skin, they want to irritate you, the worst thing that you can do to them is not to get angry. Just to ignore it and to ignore them. That's the worst thing you can do to them, because they want to make you angry. And if they make you angry, they're satisfied. And now you're disturbed. They're happy and you're unhappy. So Swami Swahananda used to say, he'd talk about the four different yogas and their different approaches to different situations, like getting angry. So he'd say that the yoga way, the way of yoga, Raja Yoga or just simply yoga, is just to say, I'm not going to let anything disturb me. I'm not going to be disturbed by anything. Easy to say, not so easy to do. But it is possible. And by saying it and trying to do it, we eventually come to a point where we begin to get control over the tendency to get angry about things. We begin to get over it. And then we realize that, yes, I don't have to react to things. One of the things that comes with long years of practice of meditation is that we begin to feel a sort of spaciousness in the mind. So that when something happens, there's an external cause that would normally elicit a reaction from us, a negative reaction from us. We have a moment of reflection where it's not an immediate response to a stimulus, but we have a moment where we realize, I can choose my response. I can choose my response. Then we realize that I don't have to get angry. I don't have to get angry. As Sri Ramakrishna, of course, said that there are situations where a show of anger is legitimate. If somebody abuses you, if somebody takes advantage of you, or is trying to take advantage of you, or trying to abuse you, then as Sri Ramakrishna said, be like the snake in the story. I won't tell the whole story. Most of you know it, some of you don't. It's a very nice story, but it's a long story, so I won't go into it. But he said, hiss. In the story, the cobra was told by his guru, by his teacher, to hiss, just don't bite. And so we have to learn to hiss sometimes. If somebody is trying to abuse us, if somebody is taking advantage of us, or whatever, then we have every right to hiss. Just don't bite. Not because the bite is going to hurt that person, but because the bite is going to hurt you. So don't bite. Learn to have control over your mind so that you can respond appropriately to a situation, including a show of anger if you need to protect yourself, or to correct someone who thinks that they can take advantage of you. But let it be a show of anger. Don't inject poison. Because by injecting poison, what happens in that situation psychologically is the poison enters into you. The poison enters into you. So don't inject poison, just hiss. So coming back to normal situations, out of anger comes delusion. Because when we get angry, we lose perspective, we lose understanding of the situation. That's why at the time after 9/11, the 2001 9/11, the attack on the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, that some of our political leaders said that, well, we have to respond. And why do we have to respond? Because, or why do people hate us? Why do the people who attacked us hate us? It's because they hate our freedoms and so forth. And we don't really need to understand the why or how of anything. We just have to respond. No, that's not the correct way, nationally or individually, to respond to a situation. By demonizing another person, by demonizing a community, by demonizing a nation, we make it impossible to understand the person and to understand what's going on and why it's going on. And so anger of any type, either collective anger or individual anger, it blinds us to the actual situation. So if you need to respond to a situation, collectively or individually, then do it calmly. Do it out of consideration by thinking, what has caused this action to which now I'm going to respond? If I don't know what has caused it, how can I respond to it properly? I can't. And so as a result, the whole country can be destroyed, millions of people can be killed, many terrible things can happen. So individually and collectively, we have to learn to keep a calm mind and to understand what's going on. Because out of anger comes a delusion. So don't give in to that. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhramaha. Out of delusion comes the loss of memory. So what does he mean? You get angry and you get, yes, you lose perspective and everything, but you still remember things. Well, this is talking about a particular memory. It means an orientation, the proper orientation within your values and spiritual orientation. That is, by getting angry and becoming deluded, you forget your spiritual orientation. You forget your higher values. You forget who you are and what you want to become, and what it is you have to do in order to get there. So it doesn't mean you forget your name, you forget your address, you forget to take your billfold to the store because you're angry. Yes, those things can, forgetting your billfold, other things can happen, but that's just for ordinary reasons. It doesn't mean the loss of memory in that sense. It means the loss of memory of who you are in a spiritual sense, what the universe is in a spiritual sense, what your ideal is in spiritual life, and how you want to get there. That all disappears when you become deluded through anger. And so, learn to keep anger under control. That doesn't mean suppressing anger. Suppressing anger doesn't do any good. It's better to go ahead and get angry rather than to suppress it. And suppress it here means just say, oh, I'm going to pretend I'm not angry. I am angry, but I'm going to pretend that I'm not, or I'm not going to look at it. No, that doesn't do any good. I once heard the Dalai Lama. This was in California around 1985 or 6, I forget. It was the time when it had just been announced at this conference that I was at in Newport, California. It had just been announced by the Nobel Committee that they were going to give the Nobel Peace Prize to the Dalai Lama. He had not yet received it, but news came while we were at this conference with the Dalai Lama that he was going to get it. And so he was being questioned by a panel of psychologists, Western psychologists, and they were asking him all sorts of questions and asking him about anger and so forth. And so the Dalai Lama said that yes, you should control anger. But if you can't control it, don't just suppress it, actually control it. Actually learn to not get angry. But if you get angry, it's better just to go ahead and get angry and then to get over with it. So yes, that's there's a lot of truth to that. That the purpose in spiritual life is not to suppress things, not to pretend that something's not there when it is there. The purpose is to diffuse anger. The goal is to diffuse anger, to not get angry, to not allow yourself to get angry because you see things in a proper perspective. So if you get angry, don't blame yourself for that. Just say that, well, next time, let me try to understand what's going on and see that I don't need to get angry. That's what we want to do. Not just pretend that it's not there when it is, and to smile when we want to punch the person in the face. not like that. Swami Vivekananda said, let no one feel bad that they have anger, because if you have anger, you have something that you can control and it brings you spiritual power. It's that which brings spiritual power. So the presence of anger is not a problem. It's learning to channel it, learning to diffuse it because you see a higher perspective. But by doing that, you get the power of the anger and it's redirected in a spiritual channel. So the purpose is not to diffuse it, not to just deny the energy altogether. It's to generate more power by self-control. Every time there's an act of conscious self-control, not suppression, but conscious self-control, then there's a generation of power. That's the whole idea behind tapasya, austerity in the Hindu thought. It's believed that everything can be attained through tapasya, through self-control, Even Uma, or Parvati, the divine mother, she won the hand of Shiva through her austerities. And so everything can be attained through austerity. It's said that the universe itself is created out of the austerity of Brahma, the creator. The creator Brahma practices austerity, and out of that this universe comes, a fruit of austerity. And here austerity doesn't mean mortification in the Western sense, where you torture the flesh or punish yourself because you're sinful or anything like that. No, it means self-control through conscious direction of the mind towards something higher. And so through control of anger, we gain in spiritual power. We gain in spiritual Brahma Tejas, Kshatravirya Brahma Teja, the glory of a Brahmana, the true glory of a Brahmana, that is the glory of a spiritual mind and the heroism of a warrior. So, krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhramaha, smriti bhramshat buddhi nasho. Out of the loss of memory, again in this special sense, the memory of our spiritual goal and our spiritual identity, comes buddhi nasha, the destruction of intelligence, the destruction of higher intelligence. It doesn't mean the ordinary intelligence, the intellect by which you do science or engineering or creative work and so forth. It means the destruction of the higher intelligence which we try to awaken through spiritual practice. That higher intelligence which begins to thin the veil of illusion which covers our eyes, so that we begin to get glimpses of spiritual reality. So that is lost through the loss of that particular meaning of memory. Buddhi nashat pranasyati. And from the loss of intelligence, one is destroyed. Doesn't mean one necessarily dies. It means that one's spiritual life is destroyed. So this all starts by thinking of sense objects. So yes, again, the sense objects that we deal with all of the time, we have to think about them. But gradually we can learn not to overthink about them, not to let the mind keep going back to it. If you find that there's something that your mind keeps going back to, then be careful. If it's an innocent thing, you like ice cream and the idea comes that you want to go get ice cream, that's not a big deal. Sri Ramakrishna said, it's better to satisfy your basic desires, to go ahead and satisfy them. You don't want to come back and be born again because you had a suppressed desire for ice cream. So that sort of thing, don't bother too much about that. I don't over desire that either, so that you can't stop, so that you can't control it. But don't worry too much about little things. But again, if you find that the mind is continually going to something that you like or that you hate or that you fear, then beware. Then be aware that no, that by the mind continually going there, then I'm developing a complex about that thing. That complex is beginning to develop, and that's going to possess me. Whether it's desire or hatred or fear, that's going to possess me. And I don't want to be possessed. I want to be free. So by thinking of things, attachment, out of attachment comes desire. Out of desire, being frustrated, comes anger. Out of anger comes the delusion. Out of delusion comes the loss of your proper memory of your spiritual identity and your spiritual goal. And out of that comes the destruction of higher intelligence. And out of that, one is destroyed in a spiritual sense. And so these are very useful verses on psychology. And so then in 64, he goes on, Ragadvesha viyuktaistu vishayan indriyaischaran atmavashyair vidhey atma prasadam adhigacchati. So the indriyas, the sense organs, raga, dvesha, viyukta, they're separated from attachment and hatred. When the senses have been brought under control and are not driven by attachment and hatred, desire and attachment, atmavashya, which are under self-control, which are under the control of the self, then vidhey atma, the self-controlled man, the vidhey atma, Prasadamat adhigacchati, attains to blessedness, attains to blessedness, attains to serenity as he translates it here, or attains to blessedness. So when one has brought the senses under control, and the senses are not under the control of desire and hatred, then one attains to a blessed state, to a serene state of mind. So that points in the direction that we want to go. So again, remember that all of these things are possible, but they are a lifetime's practice. The Gita is not meant for study it 1 week and the next week you can go on to other things because you've done everything the Gita said. No, the Gita is teaching you life's lessons that you can work on throughout your life. That they work, that they're practical, but they're not something just to you learn a few psychological tricks, a little pop psychology, you solved all your problems and now you can float freely. No. They work, they are practical, they can be perfected and can lead you and us to perfection. But take it as something which are to be learned and to practice through a lifetime in order for that to happen. 65, Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajáyate prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhi paryavatishthate. So prasade sarva dukkhanam, when there is serenity in the midst of all miseries of life, all of the miseries of life, I need to get the rest of that line. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanir asyopajayate. When there's serenity, then sarva dukkhanam hani asya upajayate. Asya, of such a person who has attained to this serenity, then sarva dukkhanam hani. There's the cessation of all miseries. That's a very promising statement. If we can attain to true serenity, if we can bring the senses under control and attain to true serenity, then there's an end of all misery. There's an end of all misery. That means that all of our miseries are because the senses are not under control. And so by bringing the senses under control, by attaining to serenity of mind, then all miseries are destroyed. Prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhi paryavatishthate. Buddhi paryavatishthate, the intelligence, the higher intelligence, spiritual intelligence, becomes completely paryavatishthate, completely established. Prasanna chetaso ashu. Ashu, quickly, for one who has attained to this serenity of mind. So as he translates it here, when there is serenity, there follows eradication of all sorrows, because the wisdom of one who has a serene mind soon becomes wholly established. So the idea here is that when you get control of the mind and the senses, then there's nothing in the world that can bring you misery. Because misery is always a reaction to something external in the external world or in the body, which also by that time you realize is external to your consciousness. That your mind is not consumed by the body, that the body also is an object of the mind. And when the mind has attained to that blessed state of serenity, then nothing in the body or in the universe can affect the state of your inner joy. That we see in the lives of saints. We see it in the lives of Christian saints, Sufi saints, Buddhist saints, Hindu saints, of saints of all traditions of the world. We see those who have attained to that state where nothing could affect them. That seems so far away from us now, but it's not that far. It's not that far. What we have to do is to work on what we can, step by step, and every step that we take, we find that misery has that much less control over us, until eventually it has no control over us. So verse 66, Nasti buddhirayuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayata shanti rashantasya kutas sukham. So nasti buddhirayuktasya. There is no higher intelligence for one who is not self-controlled. For one who does not have control of the mind and the senses, then there's no higher spiritual intelligence. Yes, we may study books, we may understand conceptually in things, but the higher intelligence will not begin to awaken for one who is not self-controlled. Ayuktas nacha yuktasya bhavana. There's no meditation, bhavana. There's no deeper state of meditation for one who is not self-controlled. So there's no wisdom and there's no meditation for one who is not self-controlled. Nacha bhavayata shanti. For one who has no deep meditation, peace is impossible. Ashantasya kutas sukham. For one who has no peace, where is happiness? Where is happiness if we have no peace? And so it's through serenity of mind that one attains to spiritual intelligence and to the power of meditation. And it's through the power of meditation that we attain to peace. And if we don't have peace, where is there any possibility for true happiness? Yes, we have a little excitement, a little sense happiness. We get a little joy from this and that and the other thing, but no real abiding happiness is possible. No abiding inner joy is possible. All of the joy, the things that we normally think of as joyful, the little experiences we have in life, yes, there is joy in many of the little experiences we have, but it's just little flickerings of joy. When the mind begins to become a little calm, then we begin to feel the joy which is natural to us. The little joys we get from the little experiences of life, yes, it's real joy, but it's just little flickerings of it. Because the mind is satisfied momentarily, becomes peaceful because of momentary satisfaction, and we get a little flickering of the experience of joy, which comes from inside. The joy doesn't come from outside. It's when the mind feels a little satisfaction, there's a flickering of joy. But when the mind begins to become peaceful, then that joy begins to become the natural state of the mind. And then that's much more intense than the little flickerings of joy that we get from ordinary experiences. And so then we find that it's not little experiences that we're after. That's not what we need to be happy. What we need is a state of mind which allows that to be constant and full-blown. So then the 67 says, Indriyanam hicharatam yanmano nuvidhiyate tarasya harati prajñam vayur navamivambhasi. Indriyanam hicharatam yanmano nuvidhiyate. When one of the senses, indriyanam hicharatam, of the senses which are wandering, when one of those senses, any one of those senses that's wandering among the objects of the senses, and the mano anuvidhiyate, and the mind is carried away, because one of the senses are wandering, and one of the senses leads us away. Our sense of taste, or our sense of touch, or our sense of sight, or whatever it is. Tarasya harati prajñam. Of such a person, the prajña, the wisdom is stolen. Harati prajñam. Vayur navamivambhasi. As the wind blows a ship off course. So we want to do something, we're going to do something, and then suddenly something attracts one of the senses. And then suddenly we're off running after it. So in the same, by that, we lose the steadiness of wisdom. So again, it doesn't mean that you can't do the things that you need to do. Yes, by all means, do the things that you need to do. But gradually, slowly, bit by bit, year after year, learn to have the mind under your own direction. That if there's something to see, yes, let the eyes see it. But because you want to see it. What usually happens is we find that the eyes are jerked away by something that the eyes want to see, and we have no control over the situation. There's something to hear, and the ears want to hear it. It's not that we want to hear something. No, the ears have decided there's something going on, and I'm going to hear it. And so with all of the senses. So gradually, by steady practice, we learn to be self-directed so that we're not pulled by the senses. Otherwise, we're like a ship, a sailing ship, which is blown hither and thither by the wind and lashed by waves and blown off course. So self-control has that value also, that it allows us to be self-directed so that we feel free in the midst of our experiences. Yes, when there's something nice to see, look at it by all means. But because you have seen it and you want to look at it, not because you have no control over the senses. They're pulling you this way and that way. That's our normal situation. We're being blown by the winds of the senses and the waves of reactions. So as it says in the translation here, among the wandering organs, since an organ with regard to which the mind is impelled carries away wisdom of this one, as wind diverts a boat on the waters, and then it continues in the next verse. This is an extremely complicated translation. We don't need to translate it so convolutedly, but again, it means that when among the wandering senses, when one of the senses the mind is carried away by one of the senses wandering on its own, then wisdom is stolen of such a person as the ship is blown off course by the wind. And then the next verse, 68, which continues the thought, Tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashah indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya prajna pratishtita. So, tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashah. Therefore, O great armed one, that is Arjuna, you are the mighty hero with the great mighty arms, of such a one for whom the senses are controlled from their sense objects. For one who has controlled the senses from the sense objects, tasya prajna pratishtita, his wisdom is fully established. He is a person of established wisdom, of stita prajna, of steady wisdom. So one whose senses are self-controlled and they're pulled back at his will from the objects of the senses. Such a one, has steady wisdom. Verse 69 says, this is a very famous verse. All of these verses that we're doing today are very famous, but this one is one that's often recited. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti sanyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. So ya nisha sarva bhutanam, that which is night to all beings, that which is night to all beings, tasyam jagarti sanyami. In that the self-controlled one wakes. And yasyam jagrati bhutani, that in which ordinary beings are awake, sa nisha pashyato munehi, that is night to the knowing sage. So that which is night to all beings, there the yogi is awake. And that in which all beings are awake, there the yogi sleeps. That's night to the yogi. So what that means is, it's a psychological statement, not talking about day and night. It means that the ordinary people where they are awake, that is in the life of the senses and the restless mind, where they're going after the objects of the senses, trying to find satisfaction, trying to avoid things that bring dissatisfaction, and the mind is restless and so forth. That the yogi has put to sleep. There his mind no longer goes in that direction. Of course, it's talking about one who has become perfected in yoga. There that has been put to sleep for the yogi. And that which is asleep to ordinary beings, that is the reality which ordinary beings don't see. They're asleep to it. The spiritual reality. That's where the yogi is awake. The yogi dwells in a realm that ordinary people don't even see. Dwells in a realm, a perception of reality, in comparison with which all of this is like a dream. That's true of the sages and saints of all traditions, whether they're the Christian saints, Sufi saints, Buddhist saints, Taoist saints, etc., Hindu saints. It's true of all of them. That such a person is awake to a different reality. Awake to a different reality. And though they see this world, it doesn't mean they're completely asleep to it, they're forgetful of it. Though they see this world, it no longer holds the mind, because they've seen that in the light of which this looks like a dream. It's like waking up from a bad dream. Doesn't have to be a nightmare, but an anxiety dream or something, or just a confusing dream or something that everyone has occasionally. Waking up from a bad dream of some sort, and realizing that, oh, I'm awake, that's not unreal. And then having the memory of that come, but you realize that who cares about that? That's not real. That was just a dream. It was just a dream. That I've put to sleep. So like that, the person who has begun to awaken to spiritual reality, then all of this is seen as a dream. Seen really as a dream. Really as a dream. This which seems so hard and everything, think about a dream in which you're dreaming and you see a table and you pound on it and it feels hard in the dream. But when you wake up, you know, no, that was just a mental creation. It was just a phantasm. And so to the yogi, going like this doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that this is so real. For those of you who were here on Sunday, was it Sunday? No. It was on last Thursday in the class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. I mentioned Samuel Johnson and his biographer Boswell, whom Aldous Huxley mentions in his introduction to the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And so Samuel Johnson, as I said at that time, for those a few of you who were here, he was a very famous English writer, thinker, lexicographer, etc. Boswell was his famous biographer and sort of the ideal biographer of a person. So Samuel Johnson once famously, there are different ways in which it's told, but one way of telling the story is that he was walking along a path and he kicked a rock. And he said, "Hereby I disprove all idealism." Idealism, the philosophical idea that everything is just an idea. Everything is flimsy as a dream. It's just a mental creation. So he kicked to the rock and said, "Hereby I refute all idealism," meaning that the rock is solid, my foot is solid, I gave it a solid kick, and so this is real, this is substantial. No, it's not. This fist which hits the table is a dream. This table which is hit is a dream. The sound which is heard is a dream. The firmness which is felt is a dream. One attains to a state where it's actually seen as a dream, as flimsy as a dream. It's seen that all of this whole universe just appears within the mind. It's born of the mind. It's a mental universe, appearing as a physical fact. And so at that time, the person realizes that, no, that which is behind this universe is that which is eternally real, eternally real. And so that they want. Since there are only 3 verses left, let me just do them quickly, though they're beautiful verses. So I don't want to ignore them, but I do want to, since we've come this close, I don't want to leave 3 verses just for next time. So number 70, which is a very important verse. Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapah pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantimapnoti nakama kami. So just as yadvat, just as Rivers are pouring into the ocean, and yet the ocean remains the same. All over the world, rivers are pouring their waters into the ocean. Rains are falling from the heavens, and yet the ocean is as it always is, unaffected. So in the same way, the sage desires, meaning the objects of the senses are entering into the sage through his senses, and yet he is unaffected, just like the ocean. The heart of the sage is like an ocean, which is unaffected by all of the experiences coming. That's a wonderful analogy, a wonderful simile, one to meditate on, to think that all of the experiences that come to the sage, you think of any realized, so one like Vivekananda, like the Holy Mother, like Sri Ramakrishna, like Ramana Maharshi, like other countless great sages of different traditions. The experiences of the universe are coming into their senses, and yet they are like the ocean, unaffected. Just as the ocean is receiving the waters of all of the rivers, and yet the ocean remains as the same. There's nothing negative about that state. There's everything desirable about that state. It doesn't mean it's not life-denying, it's not world-denying. It means that you become free. In the midst of your experience, in the midst of experience, that you're free, unaffected by anything. Unaffected by anything that could be taken in a negative sense, that like the wall's unaffected by anything, the wall doesn't care for anybody. No, it doesn't mean being like a wall. It means being fully sentient, fully conscious, fully aware. An ocean of love, an ocean of joy, an ocean of wisdom, full of compassion for everything in the universe, and yet unaffected, personally unaffected by anything. Number 71, Vihaya kamanya sarvan bhumams charati nispriyaha nirmamo nirahankara sashantim adhigacchati. Yah sarvan kaman vihaya, who gives up all desires. Bhumams charati nispriyaha, such a person who moves without any attachment to anything. Nirmamo, without the sense of mind. Nirahamkara, without the sense of I, as opposed to you who are not I. Sashanti madhigacchati, he attains to infinite peace. He attains to infinite peace, who has gone beyond I and mine, because the I has become all. The all, as Swami Vivekananda says in the Song of the Sannyasin, the I has all become. The all is I and bliss. Such a one has become the infinite ocean of bliss. Everything has become the I. Such a person attains to peace. And finally, Esha Brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati sthitva syam antakalepi brahma nirvanam richati. Esha Brahmi sthiti partha, O Partha, this state, this Brahmic state of identity with Brahman, nainam prapya vimuhyati, having attained this, one never becomes deluded again. Having attained to this, having known one's infinite nature, one's identity with the whole universe, one is never deluded again. Stitvasyam antakalepi brahma nirvanam richati. Having attained that, at the end of one's life, one attains to nirvana, brahma nirvana. That is, nirvana, as some of you know, the state that the Buddha taught, means being snuffed out. And the Buddhists interpreted that literally, as the Theravada Buddhists, as being snuffed out. The individuality is snuffed out. And there's no self, there's no reality, it's just being snuffed out. But here Sri Krishna differentiates it. Brahma Nirvana, that is being snuffed out into the infinite. The small has become snuffed out. The infinite remains. That which you always were, but which you forgot you were. Each of us is identified with the whole, but we've identified with smallness. As the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Nalpe Sukhamasti. There is no happiness in the small. Bhumaiva Sukham. The infinite alone is happiness. The infinite alone is happiness. And so such a one attains to the infinite. And that you lose nothing. You gain everything. What you lose is smallness. You don't lose who you are. You don't lose anything except for smallness, except for limitedness, except for everything which you want to be free of. You gain everything because you lose the nature of a drop by becoming the ocean itself. It's not that the drop is lost. You weren't the drop to begin with. You had identified with the drop, thinking that's who you were, when in reality you were the ocean. You were looking at the drop and thinking, that's who I am, forgetting that, no, I'm back here. I'm the ocean itself. So it's over time, and so I'll stop here. I'm sorry I didn't leave time for questions. I tried to do that, but I didn't at the same time want to not finish the chapter. Next week, when we have the class again, I'll say a few words more about the closing of the chapter and the meaning of the chapter in general before we continue on with chapter 3. But let me just read the colophon at the end. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Sankhya Yogo Nama Dvitiyodhyaya. Om Tat Sat. Thus is the second chapter known as Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga, that I'll explain next time more. I've already explained it in previous classes, but say more about it next class, which is in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the Upanishads. Again, it's not technically an Upanishad, but because it's full of the Upanishadic wisdom, it's considered an honorary Upanishad, you could say. In the wisdom of Brahman, among the scriptures of yoga, Yoga Shastre, Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade, in the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, this is the second chapter known as Sankhya Yoga. So let me give a closing chant and then I'll give announcements. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. That infinite reality is full, perfect, and complete. This relative universe is full, perfect, and complete. From out of the fullness of that infinite being, the fullness of this universe has come. And yet that being remains ever the same. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all the beings of the universe. So for announcements, on Thursday we'll have the usual class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna.